Imagine losing your Second Amendment rights forever, not because you committed a violent crime, but simply because the government didn't approve of your lifestyle choices. Sound far-fetched? Well, that's precisely what's at stake in a groundbreaking case the Supreme Court just agreed to hear. United States v. Hamani. Before we dive in, I want to quickly mention that subscribing to the channel is one of the easiest ways you can show your support. It really helps us grow and reach more people. The Supreme Court has just taken on another critical Second Amendment case, and this one cuts to the heart of a fundamental question. Who exactly are the people protected by the Second Amendment? At the center of this case is a federal law, 18 U.S.C. Section 922G3, which prohibits anyone who unlawfully uses or is addicted to controlled substances from possessing firearms. The question before the court isn't really about drugs themselves. It's about something much bigger. Who gets to decide whether you're a law-abiding citizen worthy of constitutional protection? And can the government strip away your rights based on suspicion rather than proof of actual danger? Here's where it gets interesting. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals recently ruled in Mr. Hamani's favor, saying the law couldn't be applied to him because he wasn't actively intoxicated when he possessed a firearm. Now the case has reached the nation's highest court, adding another major Second Amendment question to this term's docket. Let me be upfront. Ali Hamani is not the ideal poster child for gun rights. The facts of his case are messy, and that makes me nervous. These are exactly the kinds of cases the government loves to push to the Supreme Court. When the defendant looks bad, it's easier to get a ruling that favors restrictions. Hamani is a dual citizen of the United States and Pakistan. In 2019, he was on the FBI's watch list. During a routine border search, agents found communications on his phone suggesting he was willing to commit fraud for individuals connected to Iran and extremist organizations. The FBI also discovered evidence that he was using and selling illegal drugs. When federal agents searched his home, they found a Glock handgun, about 60 grams of marijuana, and several grams of cocaine. Hamani admitted to smoking marijuana regularly, nearly every other day, though he wasn't actually high at the time of the search. This brings us to that federal law and the question you see on every Form 4473 when you buy a gun. Are you an unlawful user of or addicted to marijuana or any depressant, stimulant, narcotic drug, or any other controlled substance? This is the law now being challenged on Second Amendment grounds. At the district court level, Hamani filed a motion to dismiss, arguing that after the Supreme Court's decisions in Bruin and Rahimi, the Second Amendment doesn't allow blanket bans like Firearm 922G3. Surprisingly, the trial court agreed and dismissed the charges. On appeal, the Fifth Circuit upheld that dismissal based on Second Amendment grounds and its own precedents. This left the Department of Justice with only one option: appeal to the Supreme Court. In June 2025, the DOJ filed its petition for review. After a conference on September 29th, the court announced today that it's taking the case. The government's petition makes three main points. First, they claim that history and tradition support disarming people deemed dangerous, including habitual drug users. They point to historical laws that restricted firearms from intoxicated individuals, the mentally ill, and others considered risks. Second, they argue that Firearm 922G3 isn't a permanent ban, it's temporary. Once someone stops using drugs and gets clean, the prohibition no longer applies. Third, they highlight a growing split among federal circuit courts on this issue. They also note that just last term the Supreme Court addressed prohibited persons in Rahimi, so this case is a natural extension of that discussion. I have to be honest, the facts here worry me. Just like in Rahimi, we're dealing with a plaintiff who doesn't look good on paper. If anything, Hamani's situation is even worse than Rahimi's. However, I think the court will try to handle this the same way they did with Rahimi. They'll narrow their ruling as much as possible to make it pro-Second Amendment while potentially limiting any negative impact to Hamani's specific circumstances. The real danger? We might get some problematic language in the opinion, just like we saw in Rahimi with that more nuanced approach language that lower courts are now using to justify all sorts of gun restrictions. When the Supreme Court includes vague phrases about considering societal changes or taking nuanced approaches, anti-gun courts seize on that language and run with it. Here's what this case ultimately boils down to. Does the Constitution only protect so-called law-abiding, responsible citizens, a category the government gets to define however it wants? Or does the Second Amendment protect all people unless there's clear, concrete proof that a specific individual poses a danger? This ruling won't just affect one man in Texas. It will establish the boundaries of Second Amendment protection for millions of Americans. It could impact who can own guns and what activities might disqualify you from exercising that right. This case will apply the analytical frameworks from Bruin and Rahimi, which means we'll get more clarity on how those standards work in practice. But here's the thing. The court's language in this opinion could ripple far beyond prohibited persons cases. We're talking about potential impacts on assault weapon bans, magazine capacity restrictions, concealed carry laws, and other Second Amendment issues that don't directly involve prohibited persons. We'll be monitoring this case closely as it moves forward. We'll be watching to see what arguments are made, what amicus briefs get filed, and when oral arguments are scheduled. The bottom line is this. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear another significant Second Amendment case. Unlike Rahimi, which dealt with domestic violence restraining orders, this case focuses on controlled substance users. But both cases ask the same fundamental question. Who are the people protected by the Second Amendment? As more information becomes available, I'll keep you updated. If you found this analysis helpful, the best way to support what we do here is to subscribe.